Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my channel? Thank you so much. I remember exactly where I was standing when my father said it. It was at my niece's graduation party. The whole family was gathered in the backyard. Picnic tables, balloons, those plastic folding chairs that dig into your thighs. Everyone was laughing, drinking, celebrating her full ride to Stanford. My father, Gerald, in his usual khaki shorts and veteran's cap, lifted his glass and toasted to how far the Kalin family name has come. He always says things like that, the Kalin name, as if it's some kind of dynasty, as if we're not just a bunch of middle-class folks in Pennsylvania who eat too much potato salad at family gatherings. I walked over with a plate of food, smiling. That's my role in this family, the smiler, the nod, the black sheep who doesn't cause trouble. My son Elias was next to me, quiet, polite, trying to disappear into his hoodie. I was genuinely proud of my niece, but I also couldn't stop thinking Elias is just as smart, maybe smarter. He just got accepted to 3 great universities, and he worked himself to the bone to get there while juggling a part-time job and helping me care for my mother during chemo. He didn't have tutors or private SAT prep. He had grit. He had me. So I leaned in and said casually, "Dad, does Elias get a piece of the college fund too?" Gerald didn't even look up from his plate. He just shook his head and muttered, "Why waste it on him? He's from a broken home." That moment split something in me, not because I hadn't heard worse, not because Elias hadn't been excluded before, he had. But something about how casual it was, the way he said it, like it was common sense, like it was a fact in a textbook, snapped something I'd been holding together for 17 years. I didn't argue, I didn't make a scene. I just smiled and said nothing, the way I always do. But inside, I was burning. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Elias had been writing a speech he was going to deliver as valedictorian of his senior class. He hadn't told anyone, not even me, what he planned to say. But when that moment came, when he stepped up to the podium in his cap and gown, holding that microphone with his hands just slightly shaking, I knew something powerful was coming. I just didn't know how powerful. And when he said his final line, I turned to look at my father. Even he, Gerald Kalin, the man who once told me I ruined the family image by getting divorced, stood up, not in applause and shock. But before I tell you what Elias said, you need to understand something. You need to understand what it's like to raise a child in a family where love is conditional, where tradition matters more than truth, where being a Kalin only earns you worth if you fit the mold. My name is Naomi. I'm a single mom, a librarian, a daughter who never quite made her father proud. And this is the story of how my son, my quiet, thoughtful, underestimated son, did something no one expected, not even me. This is the story of what he said on that stage and why that moment changed everything. What they didn't see about my son. Let me take you back to where this really started, not at the graduation party, not even when Elias got his college acceptance letters, but 17 years ago in a cramped hospital room where I held him for the first time with one hand and signed my divorce papers with the other. Elias came into this world during what was without a doubt the worst time of my life. My marriage had fallen apart faster than I thought it ever could. My ex-husband Ryan cheated while I was pregnant. He moved out 2 months before Elias was born and hasn't been consistent since, not as a father, not even as a voice on the phone. He sends birthday texts sometimes, that's about it. My family didn't handle the news well. My mother cried more over my divorce than she did when she lost her sister. My siblings, Catherine and Joel, barely spoke to me for a while, and my father, Gerald, didn't say much at all. Just one line I'll never forget. "Well, you made your bed." And maybe I did, but I made a second one too for Elias, and I made it warm and safe and full of stories at bedtime. Because from the moment he opened his eyes, that boy became my world. We didn't have a lot, but we had each other. I worked as a librarian, which isn't exactly a gold mine, but I loved it. I'd bring Elias with me after school, and he'd sit quietly in the kids section, reading every book he could get his hands on. By the time he was 8, he was reading at a 10th grade level. By 10, he was writing short stories that made me cry, not just because they were good, but because they came from this quiet, watchful child who never asked for much but felt everything. He never complained when he wore thrift store clothes, never asked why we didn't go on vacations like his cousins, and he never, not once, said a word when he noticed how the family treated him differently. Because they did. Catherine and Joel's kids always had seats at the grown-up table. Elias sat with the younger ones. Even when he was 14 at Christmas, they get gift cards and video games. Elias got socks. One year, Gerald forgot to put his name on the stocking. Elias never showed it bothered him, but I saw it in the way he'd fold his napkin 3 times before eating, and how he waited for everyone else to speak first, and how he always kept a journal in his pocket, writing down things he didn't feel safe saying out loud. I wanted to scream sometimes, to shake my family and say, "Look at him. Don't you see how remarkable he is?" But I didn't, because I thought maybe if I stayed quiet long enough, they'd come around. Spoiler alert, they didn't. The only one who truly saw Elias was my mother, Doreen. She'd sit with him, listen to his stories, call him my little professor. Even in her final year, when chemo made her weak, she'd light up when Elias walked in the room. She said he reminded her of someone, me, when I was little, before the world got loud, before I learned to shrink myself to fit inside my family's expectations. When she passed, Elias was 15. He didn't cry in public, but that night I found one of his poems tucked into her Bible. It was titled "The Last Woman Who Saw Me." That line, it gutted me. After she was gone, it was just us, just me and Elias, trying to navigate a family that made us feel like extras in a movie they starred in. And yet, through all of that, through being overlooked, underappreciated, and downright dismissed, he never lashed out. He studied, he helped, he wrote. And when senior year came around, he applied to colleges without asking me for a dime. He got into every single one. So yes, when my father said, "Why waste it on him?" I smiled and said nothing. But that smile, it wasn't surrender, it was a promise. Because what they didn't see, what they never saw, was that my son was about to show them exactly who he was. And I knew deep in my bones that when that moment came, they wouldn't forget it. Why waste it on him? There are moments in life that don't just hurt, they stain. They cling to your skin, your voice, your memory. You carry them quietly for years. That moment in my father's backyard, the one where he dismissed my son's entire future with a single sentence, was one of those. Why waste it on him? He's from a broken home. He didn't say it in anger. He said it like you talk about the weather, like Elias's worth was just less obvious. I looked at my son, who had frozen mid-bite, his fork hovering over a paper plate of potato salad and ribs. He didn't flinch, didn't cry. He just looked down and kept eating, slower this time. I wanted to grab my father's drink and pour it on his lap. I wanted to stand up and scream, "You don't know him." But I didn't. I've learned in this family that standing up for yourself just gives them more reasons to dismiss you. So I stayed seated, smiling, boiling. Later that night, I found Elias in his room typing. I asked him how he was feeling. He said, "Fine." Then a moment later, "Do you think it's true?" That question cut me deeper than anything Gerald could have said. I sat on the edge of his bed, took a breath, and said, "No, baby, what's broken is how they see the world, not you." He nodded, but I could see the doubt crawling behind his eyes. He was already filing the moment away, another mark in the journal of things I don't say out loud. After that, something shifted. Elias started working harder, sleeping less. He was always smart, but now he was driven, obsessed. Every scholarship, every writing contest, every extra credit assignment, he chased them like they were oxygen. I worried he was running from something, not toward it. One afternoon, I came home early from work and heard him crying through the bathroom door. It wasn't loud, just quiet sobs, choked like he was trying not to let them out. I didn't knock, I couldn't. I sat outside that door for 20 minutes with my hand on the floor, heart in my throat, thinking, how many times have I let him feel alone? Because I didn't want to rock the boat. Me, how to stand tall without applause, how to work hard when no one was watching, how to believe in myself when the people who were supposed to didn't. You could hear the shift in the room. The audience, mostly parents and teachers, leaned forward. A few gasped, a couple wiped their eyes, and still my family didn't move. Gerald stared stone-faced, Catherine glanced sideways at him, and Joel leaned back in his seat like it was a performance he didn't want to admit he was watching. But Elias didn't flinch. He stood with the calm of someone who had nothing left to prove and everything to say. I spent years thinking silence meant peace, he continued. That if I kept my head down, maybe I'd earn my place. That if I worked hard enough, maybe I'd stop feeling like a guest in my own family. My hands were shaking in my lap, and then he said, I realized something important. You don't wait to be invited to take up space in this world. You claim it, you build it, you own it. I looked around. Parents were nodding, kids were whispering, a few teachers were wiping away tears. And then Elias closed his journal. He looked up, and this time his eyes weren't scanning the room, they were fixed, laser sharp, directly on one man, Gerald. And that's when he said it. I was raised in what they call a broken home, but broken homes don't raise broken people. They raise fighters, they raise listeners, they raise leaders, they raise sons who grow up to stand here today and make even the quiet ones listen. It landed like thunder. There was a moment, barely a beat, where no one moved, no one clapped. It was like the room collectively inhaled. Then the applause hit like a wave. People stood, not just a polite standing ovation, they stood like something important had just happened, like they knew they'd witnessed something bigger than a graduation speech. And that's when it happened. Gerald stood, not quickly, not dramatically. He rose slowly as if unsure whether he meant to do it at all. But he stood, and for a second, just a second, his face cracked. Not a smile, not tears, just the smallest flicker of something behind his eyes. Shock, realization, maybe even shame, but not pride. No, not yet. That would come later, maybe. But in that moment, Elias didn't need his pride. He'd already won. After the ceremony, I walked with Elias to the car. I expected him to be buzzing with adrenaline, proud, excited, but he was quiet, thoughtful, like the storm had passed and left behind calm waters. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, I didn't do it to hurt him." "I know," I said. "You did it to heal you." He smiled just a little, and maybe someone like me was sitting in that crowd, someone who needed to hear it. That line broke me because that's who Elias is. That's who he's always been, not angry, not bitter, just brave. Later that night, I got a text from Gerald. It said, "He surprised me." I stared at it for a long time. No apology, no acknowledgement of what he said all those months ago, but I didn't need one. Elias had said everything that needed to be said, and the world listened. What my son taught me about worth, you'd think after a moment like that, after your son stands on a stage and tells the truth to a room full of people who spent years pretending he didn't exist, things would change overnight. But they didn't, at least not on the surface. Gerald didn't call me. He didn't come up after the ceremony. He didn't hug Elias or say, "I'm proud of you," or "I was wrong." That would have required more humility than he's ever shown in his life. What he did was send a text. He surprised me. 3 words, no punctuation, no warmth, but somehow they felt louder than any speech he'd ever given at those family barbecues. Because for Gerald Kalin, that was a crack in the wall, not an apology, but maybe an opening. Still, I didn't respond. This story was never about him anyway. That night, Elias and I sat on the living room floor eating takeout and watching his speech again on someone's Instagram story. Someone had filmed the whole thing and posted it with the caption, "Best grad speech I've ever heard. This kid's going places." The video already had thousands of views. I looked over at Elias and said, "That's your legacy now." He shrugged. "It was just a speech." "No," I said, "it was a statement." He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I didn't do it for him, or for them. I know I did it for us, for the version of me I used to be, the one who thought he had to shrink to fit into this family." That's when it hit me. This story started with me trying to protect Elias from feeling like less, but in the end, it was he who taught me what it means to be whole. I spent years quietly begging for validation, trying not to upset my father or embarrass the family or make things harder for Elias than they already were. I thought if I stayed small, they'd eventually make room for us. But Elias never wanted a seat at their table. He built his own. In the weeks after graduation, something shifted between us. There was a stillness in him, a grounded confidence I hadn't seen before, like a storm had passed through him and left something stronger behind. He packed for college with excitement, not nerves. He said goodbye to his childhood bedroom like he was closing a chapter, not losing something. He wasn't running away from the family that ignored him. He was walking toward the life he built, step by step, choice by choice, word by word. And me? I stopped waiting for approval. I stopped sending the family photos they never asked for. I stopped hoping Gerald would wake up one day and see me as a worthy daughter. I stopped trying to explain my son's brilliance to people who were too proud or too blind to care, because I don't need them to see it anymore. The world does. A few months into his first semester, Elias called me from his dorm. "Guess what?" he said. "I just won the freshman writing award." "Of course you did," I said, grinning into the phone. "What was it for?" He paused. "An essay about being raised by a woman who taught me I was enough before anyone else ever did." I cried right there in the middle of the grocery store, standing between the apples and the peanut butter, because that's the real ending of this story. Not revenge, not validation, not even pride, but love. A love that's quiet and steady and refuses to give up, even when the world tells you to. A love that raises a boy to become a man who knows his own worth so deeply that not even the coldest rejection can shake it. A love that didn't need a college fund, just belief. So if you've ever been told that your family makes you less, if someone's tried to define you by your scars or your story, remember this: broken homes don't raise broken people, they raise warriors. They raise writers. They raise sons like Elias and mothers like me. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of your own journey or someone you love, don't keep it to yourself. Like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your story too. Every voice matters, and when we speak our truth, we don't just heal, we help others feel less alone. And if you want more stories like this, real, raw, and honest, hit that subscribe button and join the community, because around here we don't believe in broken people, we believe in comeback stories. Thanks for watching. I'm glad you were here.